I adjust my grips one final time, knowing this routine will determine whether I make the Olympic team when my phone buzzes with the message that destroys everything. And as I read the words that will haunt me for the rest of my short, miserable life, I realize that even now, even at the 2024 National Gymnastics Championships with cameras rolling and scouts watching and my entire future hanging in the balance, my parents have chosen her again. Elena, darling, we won't make it to nationals after all. Sophia's Carnegie Hall debut is tonight and the Winstons are attending. You understand? We'll watch the live stream. Break a leg. Love, Mom. Break a leg, she says, as if this is some casual high school meet instead of the competition that will determine whether I spend the next 6 months preparing for the Olympics or watching them from my dorm room at Stanford. And I want to scream because this is the third time in 6 months that my parents have chosen my sister's music career over my gymnastics. The third time they've decided that Sophia's recitals and competitions and performances matter more than the sport I've dedicated my entire life to mastering. The vault runway stretches before me like a pathway to hell, and I know I should put the phone away, should focus on the routine I've practiced 10,000 times, should channel the rage and disappointment into the explosive power I need to stick this landing and secure my spot on the Olympic team. But all I can think about is how they promised, how they swore they would be here this time, after missing regionals for Sophia's piano competition in Vienna, after skipping nationals qualifier for her performance with the Chicago Symphony, after choosing her European concert tour over my training camp last summer. I am Elena Chen, 19 years old, daughter of Richard and Victoria Chen, who built their hotel empire on the principle that excellence demands sacrifice, yet somehow my sacrifices never count. Somehow my achievements never measure up to the cultural refinement they see in Sophia's piano playing. And as I begin my sprint toward the vault, I can hear my coach Marcus shouting encouragement, but all I hear is the silence where my parents' voices should be, the empty seats where they should be sitting, the complete absence of the two people whose approval I've spent my entire life chasing. The takeoff feels wrong the moment my feet leave the ground, my body rotating too slowly because my mind is elsewhere, in a concert hall 3,000 miles away where my 17-year-old sister is probably taking her bow while the Winstons applaud and my parents beam with pride at their real daughter, their talented daughter, their daughter who pursues art instead of the brutish physicality of throwing herself through the air and hoping gravity will be kind. I hit the mat hard, my ankle twisting at an angle that sends lightning through my entire leg. And as I roll away from the vault, I can hear the collective gasp from the audience, can see Marcus running toward me with concern written across his face, can feel the weight of 18 years of training and sacrifice and dreams crumbling around me, like the dreams of every gymnast who peaks too early, or chokes under pressure, or simply runs out of time. Elena, are you okay? Marcus asks. But I'm not okay. I haven't been okay since the day my parents first suggested that maybe gymnastics was just a phase. Maybe I should consider focusing on academics like my sister focuses on music. Maybe I should think about what kind of life I want after my body inevitably breaks down and I can no longer compete at the highest levels. The medical team surrounds me as I sit on the mat. My Olympic dreams bleeding out through the tears I refuse to let fall, and I know, without looking at the scoreboard, that my routine was a disaster, that my ankle is probably sprained, if not worse, that the coaches and officials and media are already writing the story of Elena Chen, the promising gymnast who choked when it mattered most, the girl who had everything and lost it in a single moment of distraction. But they don't know the real story, don't know that I didn't choke under pressure, but under the weight of a lifetime of coming second to a piano, of being the daughter who throws herself through the air while her sister makes beautiful music, of being the child whose achievements require nothing more than showing up while Sophia's require expertise and culture, and the kind of refined appreciation that marks truly sophisticated people. The Chen family built their empire on precision and excellence, owning the largest chain of luxury hotels in North America. Yet somehow, my achievements never measured up to Sophia's artistic pursuits, never earned the same pride and attention and investment that my parents poured into my sister's musical education from the moment she first touched a piano key at age 4. I started gymnastics at the same age, but while Sophia's lessons were conducted by master teachers in our family's private music room, with its Steinway grand piano and acoustically perfect walls, my training happened in converted warehouses and rented gym spaces. My parents viewing athletics as something that required only basic instruction and natural talent, rather than the sophisticated development they insisted Sophia's musical gifts demanded. By the time I was 16 and winning national championships, Sophia was performing with youth orchestras and winning international piano competitions. And somehow, her achievements always seemed more impressive to our parents, more worthy of their time and attention and financial support, more aligned with the kind of legacy they wanted the Chen family to represent in high society circles, where athletic achievement is respected but artistic achievement is revered. The ambulance ride to the hospital passes in a blur of questions I can't answer, and pain medication that doesn't touch the real hurt. The knowledge that I've wasted my one chance at Olympic glory because I couldn't stop thinking about parents who never showed up when I needed them most, who always had somewhere more important to be, someone more important to support. Dr. James Liu meets us at the emergency room, his familiar face a small comfort in the chaos of x-rays and medical terminology, and the growing certainty that my competitive career is over. And I remember how he used to watch my meets when he was still in medical school. How he always said I had something special. How he never understood why my family didn't see what he saw when I performed. Torn ACL, he says quietly, his hand gentle on my shoulder, as he explains what the MRI reveals, what surgery will entail, what recovery looks like for a gymnast who needs to maintain elite-level skills. Elena, I'm sorry, the timing couldn't be worse. But the timing is perfect, I think, as the reality settles over me like a burial shroud because now my parents won't have to choose between my competitions and Sophia's performances anymore. Won't have to make excuses about why they can't attend both. Won't have to pretend that they ever really believed I could amount to anything more than a girl who did impressive tricks for a few years before settling into the business career they always planned for me. The family dinner 3 weeks later confirms everything I've always known but never wanted to admit. As my parents announce Sophia's acceptance to Juilliard with champagne and tears of joy while my crutches lean against the dining room wall like a monument to failure, my gymnastics career reduced to past tense while Sophia's musical future stretches ahead bright with possibility. We're so proud, my mother says, her hand stroking Sophia's hair with the tenderness she's never shown me. Our daughter at Juilliard, following her artistic passion, building something beautiful with her life instead of just pursuing temporary physical achievements. Temporary physical achievements, she calls them, as if the 18 years I spent perfecting my craft mean nothing compared to the 18 years Sophia spent perfecting hers. As if Olympic medals are somehow less valuable than concert hall applause, as if representing your country at the highest levels of athletic competition is somehow inferior to playing piano for wealthy donors at charity galas. I try to continue training after the surgery, working part-time jobs to afford coaching, since my parents redirect my former training budget to Sophia's new Steinway and private lessons with master teachers in New York, and I tell myself that I can come back from this injury, that I can regain my elite skills and maybe still make the next Olympic cycle if I work harder than ever before. But training alone is dangerous. Training without proper supervision is stupid. Training while working 3 jobs to pay for gym time and coaching is nearly impossible. And when I fall during an unsupervised session and re-injure the same knee, I know that my competitive career is truly over, that I've lost everything I worked for because I couldn't afford the proper support that might have kept me safe. My parents' response to the second injury is delivered with the kind of false sympathy that barely conceals their relief. Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise, Elena. You can focus on business studies now like we always wanted. Prepare for a real career that will last longer than a few years in the spotlight. A few years in the spotlight, they call it, as if Olympic champions are forgotten the moment they retire, as if the discipline and dedication and mental toughness required to compete at the highest levels of any sport teach you nothing about success in other areas of life, as if the work ethic and goal setting and performance under pressure that gymnastics taught me wouldn't serve me well in any career I chose to pursue. Instead, I find myself at 25, working in the family business, managing hotel operations and attending board meetings and pretending that this was always my plan, that I never dreamed of anything more than processing invoices and reviewing staff schedules and listening to my parents discuss Sophia's latest performance successes with the kind of enthusiasm they never showed for my athletic achievements. Sophia has become everything our parents dreamed, performing at Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall, touring with orchestras and recording albums, and building the kind of artistic reputation that opens doors in high society, that earns respect from the cultural elite who view her musical gifts as evidence of superior breeding and refinement. I watch her latest performance on the hotel office television, another sold-out show at another prestigious venue, another triumph for the Chen family's cultural legacy. And I try to feel proud of my sister's success instead of bitter about my own failures. Try to convince myself that this life I'm living is meaningful, even if it's not the life I wanted. 6 years have passed since I gave up everything, and I'm still living in her shadow. Still the daughter they settled for. Still the child whose achievements never quite measured up to their expectations or their definitions of what success should look like for a family like ours. The irony is that I'm driving to deliver documents for another one of their last-minute demands when the accident happens, rushing through traffic because they threatened to fire me if I missed another family obligation for what they called my personal priorities. And as the truck runs the red light and my car spins out of control, my last thought is wondering if they'll even pause Sophia's standing ovation to mourn me. Then I opened my eyes and realized I was 17 again, lying in my childhood bedroom with my first-place gymnastics medals gleaming on the wall. And tomorrow was the day I had to choose between elite training camp and Sophia's European concert tour, the moment when everything went wrong in my previous life, the decision that set me on the path to mediocrity and disappointment and early death. The morning sunlight streams through my bedroom windows exactly the way it did 8 years ago, and I know with absolute certainty that I have been given the most impossible gift imaginable: a second chance to live my life correctly, to make the choices that serve my dreams instead of my parents' expectations, to prioritize my own future over my family's convenience. I remember everything with perfect clarity, every moment of the life I just lived and lost, every disappointment and betrayal and missed opportunity that led me to waste my potential in service of people who never valued what I offered, who never understood that my athletic achievements were just as worthy of their support and pride as Sophia's musical accomplishments. Today, my parents expect me to announce that I'm skipping the elite training camp invitation to accompany the family on Sophia's European tour, to smile and play the supportive sister role while she performs for audiences who will shower her with the kind of applause I'll never receive if I keep making choices that put her career ahead of mine. But I am not the same Elena who made that choice 8 years ago. Not the naive 17-year-old who believed that family loyalty meant sacrificing her dreams for other people's success. Not the girl who thought that being a good daughter required putting everyone else's needs before her own. I am 25 years old in a 17-year-old body, armed with the knowledge of exactly what happens when you spend your life seeking approval from people who will never give it. When you chase love from parents who have already decided which child deserves their attention and investment and pride. The breakfast table scene unfolds exactly as I remember, my parents discussing Sophia's upcoming performances, with the kind of enthusiasm they've never shown for my competitions. My sister practicing scales on her fingers while she eats, her mind already focused on the concerts that will cement her reputation as a rising star in the classical music world. Elena, my mother says without looking up from her phone where she's reviewing Sophia's touring schedule. You'll need to pack this week for the European trip. The family needs to present a united front for Sophia's debut performances. This is the moment I realize when the old Elena would have nodded and smiled and agreed to give up 5 weeks of elite training for the privilege of sitting in concert halls and applauding her sister's success, when she would have chosen family harmony over personal ambition and started down the path that led to mediocrity and regret. I'm accepting the elite training invitation and moving to the Olympic Training Center full-time, I announce, my voice steady and clear. And the silence that follows is so complete, I can hear Sophia's fingers stop moving on the table, can see my parents' shocked faces as they process words they never expected to hear from their compliant, accommodating, always understanding daughter. Don't be ridiculous, my father says, his voice carrying the tone he uses in business meetings when someone suggests something he considers beneath serious consideration. Sophia needs family support for her European debut, and this is a crucial time for establishing her international reputation. My athletic career has exactly 18 months before I age out of elite competition, I reply, using the same calm, professional tone he just used with me. Sophia has her entire life for concerts. I have one chance at the Olympics, and I'm not giving it up to be a professional audience member for someone else's dreams. The words hang in the air like a declaration of war, and I can see my parents struggling to process this new version of their daughter, this Elena who speaks directly about her own needs instead of deferring to family expectations, who prioritizes her own goals over their convenience. Elena Chen, my mother says, her voice rising with the kind of indignation she usually reserves for hotel staff who fail to meet her standards. You're being incredibly selfish. The family reputation depends on presenting a united front, and Sophia needs our support during this critical period of her career development. Sophia is 17 years old and performing at venues that most musicians never reach in their entire careers. I respond, feeling the strange freedom that comes from finally speaking truth instead of maintaining peace. She's incredibly talented and well prepared and surrounded by professionals who know how to support her career. She doesn't need me sitting in the audience to validate her success. My sister looks up from her plate with an expression I can't quite read, something between hurt and surprise, and maybe the tiniest bit of relief, as if she's never considered that my constant presence at her performances might be obligation rather than choice, duty rather than genuine enthusiasm. You've never talked like this before, she says quietly, and there's something in her voice that makes me wonder if the old Elena's sacrifices created pressure for Sophia too. If having a sister who gave up everything to support her career made my sister feel guilty about accepting support she never actually requested. I've never been honest before, I admit, looking directly at her for the first time in years with clear eyes instead of resentful ones. I've been pretending that I don't mind giving up my dreams for yours, but I do mind, and I'm not going to do it anymore. The conversation that follows is everything I expected and worse, with my parents deploying every manipulation tactic they've perfected over the years. Guilt about family loyalty, threats about financial support, comparisons to other families who prioritize togetherness over individual ambition, lectures about the temporary nature of athletic achievement versus the lasting value of cultural accomplishment. But I am immune to their manipulation now, protected by the knowledge of exactly where compliance leads, exactly what happens when you spend your life trying to earn love from people who have already decided you're not worth their full attention and support. I contact Olympic coach Marcus Rodriguez directly, bypassing my parents' attempts to control my schedule and my choices. And when he answers the phone, I can hear the surprise in his voice because the old Elena always let her parents handle these conversations, always deferred to their judgment about what opportunities were worth pursuing. Elena, I'm so glad you called, he says, and I can hear the genuine warmth in his voice, the kind of enthusiasm for my potential that my own parents have never shown. I was hoping you'd accept the training invitation. You have something special, something that could take you all the way to the Olympics if you're willing to commit fully to the process. All the way to the Olympics, he says, as if it's a real possibility instead of a ridiculous fantasy, as if my athletic potential is something worth investing in and developing instead of something that should be sacrificed for more important family priorities. And I open an independent bank account using prize money I've been saving for years. Money my parents never knew existed because they assumed all my gymnastics earnings went toward training expenses. And for the first time in my life, I have financial independence, the freedom to make choices based on my own goals instead of my family's expectations. When I inform my Stanford coach that I'm deferring my academic scholarship to focus on Olympic preparation, she supports my decision immediately, tells me that the university will hold my spot and that pursuing elite athletics while I'm still young enough to compete at the highest levels makes perfect sense for someone with my abilities. My parents' increasing pressure over the following days only confirms that I'm making the right choice as they escalate from disappointment to anger to threats, claiming that I'm destroying family harmony and disrespecting everything they've taught me about loyalty and sacrifice and putting family needs above personal desires. If you choose this selfish path, my mother says during what I know will be our final argument about the European tour, don't expect us to fund your training or support your career or treat you like family when you inevitably fail and come crawling back asking for help. I don't need your money anymore, I reply with perfect calm, watching her face change as she realizes I'm serious, that I've actually planned for this independence instead of just making empty threats like a rebellious teenager. And I certainly don't need your approval to pursue excellence in my chosen field. The shock on both their faces is almost comical, as if they've never considered that their younger daughter might be capable of surviving without their financial support and emotional manipulation, as if they've never imagined that I might actually prefer independence to the conditional love they've been offering my entire life. Moving to the Olympic Training Center feels like stepping into an alternate universe where my athletic achievements matter more than my ability to sit quietly in concert halls, where coaches and training partners and support staff treat my gymnastics career as something worthy of serious investment rather than an expensive hobby that takes time away from more important family obligations. Dr. James Liu is there when I arrive, now working as a sports medicine specialist with Olympic athletes, and I can see the surprise in his eyes when I walk into the training facility with complete confidence instead of the apologetic deference I showed in my previous life when I treated my own athletic career as an imposition rather than a legitimate pursuit. Elena, he says, and there's something in his voice that wasn't there before, a warmth and respect that I never earned in my first life because I never believed I deserved it, never carried myself like someone whose dreams mattered as much as anyone else's. I'm so glad you decided to train here full time. I've always believed you had Olympic potential. Olympic potential, he says, as if it's obvious, as if my talent has always been visible to people who weren't blinded by assumptions about which kinds of achievement deserve support and which kinds are just pleasant diversions for children who will eventually outgrow their physical capabilities. Training with Marcus Rodriguez is revelation after revelation, as he pushes me to technical perfection and mental toughness levels I never reached in my previous life. When my preparation was constantly interrupted by family obligations and emotional manipulation that left me distracted and anxious instead of focused and confident. "You're different than I expected," he tells me after our first week of intensive preparation, and I can see him trying to understand why the Elena who shows up for training is so much more composed and determined than the Elena he met at competitions where I always seemed torn between my athletic goals and my family responsibilities. "I decided to stop trying to be everything to everyone," I explain. "And it's the truth even if it's not the whole truth. Even if I can't tell him that I've already lived through the consequences of making choices based on other people's expectations instead of my own dreams and ambitions." My training partner, Maya Santos, becomes the friend she was always meant to be, the supportive teammate I never appreciated in my first life because I was too caught up in family drama to recognize genuine friendship when it was offered, too distracted by resentment to see the opportunities for connection and mutual support that were always available. "I'm so glad you're here full time," she says as we work through beam routines that require the kind of mental focus I never achieved when part of my attention was always on the family conflicts my athletic career created. "You seem so much more confident now, so much more committed to your own success." "More committed to my own success?" she says, and I realize that this is what changes everything. The decision to prioritize my own goals instead of managing other people's emotions, to invest my energy in my own development instead of constantly trying to prove that I deserve the support I should have received unconditionally. The sponsorship offers that my parents rejected in my previous life as too commercial and beneath our family's reputation become the foundation of my financial independence. Contracts with athletic companies who recognize my potential and want to invest in my Olympic preparation instead of treating my career as an expensive burden on family resources. "We're excited to support your Olympic journey," the marketing representative says as I sign contracts that would have been impossible in my first life, when my parents controlled every aspect of my athletic career and made decisions based on their comfort level rather than my professional needs. "We believe you have what it takes to represent our brand at the highest levels of international competition." The highest levels of international competition, they say, as if it's a given that I'll make the Olympic team, as if my athletic potential is something worth betting on instead of something that should be managed and contained and ultimately sacrificed for more important family priorities. My parents' attempts to maintain control become increasingly desperate as they realize that I'm serious about my independence, that I've actually built a support system that doesn't require their approval or financial backing, that I'm capable of pursuing my goals without their permission or involvement. "You're making a terrible mistake," my father says during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he uses when he expects immediate compliance. "Athletic careers are short and uncertain. and you're throwing away guaranteed opportunities for temporary fame that will leave you with nothing when your body inevitably breaks down. My body is in perfect condition, I reply, feeling the strength and flexibility and power that come from training at the highest levels, from working with coaches and medical staff who understand how to develop and maintain elite athletic performance. And even if my competitive career only lasts a few years, those will be years spent pursuing my dreams instead of supporting other people's. The family's annual charity gala approaches like a reckoning, the event where I know my parents will make their final attempt to humiliate me back into compliance, to prove that my athletic achievements are somehow less valuable than Sophia's musical accomplishments by showcasing her performance in front of our family's wealthy social circle. I arrive at the gala in my Olympic training gear instead of the formal dress my mother demanded I wear, and I can see the shock and anger on both my parents' faces as I make my entrance looking like an athlete instead of a dutiful daughter who has learned to prioritize family reputation over personal authenticity. Elena Chen, my mother hisses as I approach the family table, where Sophia sits in a beautiful gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. What do you think you're doing dressed like that at a formal event? I'm representing my actual life instead of pretending to be someone I'm not, I reply, and I can see other guests turning to look at our conversation. Wealthy donors and socialites who recognize me from recent media coverage of my Olympic preparation. I thought you raised me to pursue excellence, not to hide my achievements for the sake of appearances. The confrontation unfolds exactly as I expected and better than I hoped, as my parents publicly berate me for embarrassing the family by prioritizing what they call simple athletics over the cultural sophistication they've tried to instill in both their daughters throughout our lives. Elena has always been difficult, my mother announces to the table of influential guests, her voice carrying the tone of patient martyrdom she's perfected over years of explaining away my athletic career. We've tried to guide her toward more refined pursuits, but she insists on this obsession with throwing herself through the air like some kind of circus performer. Circus performer, she calls me, in front of people who have been following my Olympic preparation, who understand that gymnastics at the elite level requires years of dedicated training and mental toughness that rivals any other pursuit, who know that representing your country at the Olympics is an honor that most people only dream of achieving. Actually, says Mrs. Wellington, one of the wealthiest donors present, I've been reading about Elena's training in the society pages. It's quite impressive, making the Olympic training program at such a competitive level. My granddaughter is a gymnast, and she's been following Elena's progress with great admiration. The silence that follows is everything I hoped for and more, as my parents struggle to respond to public recognition of my achievements from someone whose opinion they actually value, someone whose social standing makes it impossible for them to dismiss my athletic career as easily as they do in private family conversations. We're very proud, my father says weakly, but everyone at the table can hear the insincerity in his voice, can see that this pride is manufactured for social consumption, rather than genuine parental support for their daughter's Olympic aspirations. Sophia's performance that night becomes the disaster I didn't expect but probably should have, as my sister struggles through pieces she's played perfectly hundreds of times before, her concentration broken by the realization that for the first time in our lives, someone at a family event is receiving more positive attention than she is. I watch her hands shake on the piano keys and feel genuinely sorry for her, not because she's failing, but because I understand now that our parents' favoritism hurt both of us, trapped her in the role of perfect daughter just as surely as it trapped me in the role of accommodating disappointment. After her performance ends with polite rather than enthusiastic applause, I approach the piano where she sits with tears in her eyes, and for the first time in years, I speak to my sister with honest affection instead of hidden resentment. You're incredibly talented, I tell her quietly, meaning it completely. But you don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to carry the weight of being the only daughter they're proud of. She looks up at me with surprise and something that might be relief, as if she's never considered that my independence might free her from expectations too, might give her permission to pursue her own goals without the pressure of being the family's entire source of cultural achievement. I never asked you to give up your dreams for mine, she whispers, and I can hear the guilt in her voice, the weight she's been carrying without my knowledge. I never wanted you to sacrifice your gymnastics for my music. I know, I reply, and I do know, finally understand that Sophia was just as trapped by our parents' favoritism as I was, just from the other side. Neither of us should have to choose between our dreams and our family. Both of us deserve support for what we love. The overheard conversation I catch later in the evening confirms everything I suspected about our parents' true motivations. As I listen to them explaining to other guests why they've always been more supportive of Sophia's musical career than my athletic pursuits. Sophia's gifts required significant financial investment, my mother says to Mrs. Chen, a family friend who has been asking about the difference in their support levels. Piano lessons, instruments, travel to competitions. It all cost so much that we felt obligated to prioritize her musical development. Elena's gymnastics just required showing up to practice. Just required showing up to practice, she says, as if elite gymnastics training doesn't cost thousands of dollars per month, as if the coaching and facilities and travel expenses for my competitions were somehow less legitimate than the same expenses for Sophia's musical education. Plus, my father adds with the kind of casual dismissal that cuts deeper than any deliberate insult, we always resented that Elena's athletic talent required no effort from us. Sophia's musical abilities needed to be cultivated and developed, but Elena was just naturally good at gymnastics. It felt unfair to invest equally in something that came so easily to her. They resented my natural talent, resented that I made their investment look unnecessary, resented that I succeeded without requiring the same level of parental management and control that Sophia's musical career demanded, and suddenly, everything about my childhood makes perfect sense in the most heartbreaking way possible. I'm moving to Colorado Springs tomorrow, I announced to the family table, looking directly at both my parents as I make my final statement about the relationship we're going to have going forward. Don't contact me unless you're ready to apologize for 18 years of treating my achievements as less important than Sophia's. The drive back to the Olympic Training Center feels like leaving prison, like escaping from a life that was slowly suffocating me, even though I didn't understand the mechanism of my own destruction. Like stepping into a future where my choices belong to me instead of being made for me by people who never valued what I offered. The months that follow are a blur of perfect training and steady progress and the kind of athletic development that becomes possible when your entire focus is on your own goals instead of managing other people's emotions. When you're surrounded by coaches and teammates and support staff who treat your Olympic dreams as legitimate aspirations rather than expensive fantasies that take time away from more important priorities. Marcus pushes me to technical perfection I never achieved in my previous life. When family drama and emotional manipulation left me distracted and anxious instead of focused and confident. And I can feel myself becoming the gymnast I was always capable of being when supported properly and trained consistently. You're ready, he tells me 2 weeks before nationals. And I can hear the confidence in his voice, the certainty that comes from working with an athlete who has finally stopped sabotaging herself with divided loyalties and conflicted priorities. You're going to dominate this competition. James provides medical support and emotional encouragement that goes beyond professional obligation. Our friendship deepening into something more as we spend hours discussing training and recovery and the mental preparation required for Olympic-level competition. And I begin to understand what it feels like to be valued by someone who actually sees and appreciates who I am. I've been watching you train, he says one evening, as we review injury prevention protocols, his hand gentle on my shoulder in a way that makes me think about futures beyond gymnastics, about building a life with someone who supports my dreams instead of resenting them. You're incredible, Elena. Not just as an athlete, but as a person who refused to let other people limit your potential. National championships arrive like the culmination of everything I've worked toward in this second chance at life, like the opportunity to prove that choosing myself over family expectations was the right decision, that pursuing my own dreams instead of supporting other people's was worth the cost of temporary relationships that were never really supportive anyway. The competition unfolds exactly as I hoped and better than I dared to expect, as I dominate every event with the confidence and technical precision that come from months of uninterrupted preparation, from training under coaches who believe in my potential and working with teammates who respect my dedication. My all-around victory is decisive and overwhelming, my highest scores coming on the events where I've always been strongest but never had the mental space to fully express my abilities, And as I stand on the podium accepting my gold medal, I can see Marcus and James and Maya cheering with the kind of genuine enthusiasm my parents never showed even when I was winning. The media attention that follows is exactly what I expected, and nothing like what I experienced in my previous life, when family conflicts and parental ambivalence about my athletic career made me apologetic about my own success instead of confident in my abilities and achievements. Elena Chen has emerged as the dominant force in American gymnastics, the Sports Illustrated article reads, combining technical excellence with a mental toughness that sets her apart from other competitors. Her path to Olympic qualification seems almost inevitable. Almost inevitable, they write, as if my success is the natural result of talent and hard work rather than the miracle of being given a second chance to make the right choices, to prioritize my own goals over other people's comfort, to finally understand that I deserve support for my dreams just as much as anyone else. My parents' attempts to reconcile, now that media coverage celebrates me as an Olympic hopeful, feel exactly as hollow and self-serving as I expected. Phone calls and emails that focus on their own discomfort with our estrangement rather than genuine recognition of how their favoritism damaged our relationship throughout my childhood and adolescence. "We've always been proud of your athletics," my mother says during a conversation that makes me want to laugh at the sheer audacity of the lie, the complete revision of history that ignores years of choosing Sophia's events over mine, of prioritizing her musical career over my athletic development, of treating my achievements as less important than my sister's. "You have 17 years to support my dreams," I reply, with the same calm professionalism I use in media interviews. No anger or resentment in my voice because I'm finally free from needing their approval or understanding. I don't need fair weather family now that other people recognize my potential. Olympic team selection becomes a formality rather than a nail-biting uncertainty. My scores and consistency throughout the selection process, making me not just a team member but alternate team captain. Recognition that reflects both my athletic abilities and the leadership qualities I've developed through learning to advocate for my own goals and needs. "Congratulations," Marcus says as we review the team announcement, his pride in my achievement visible in every aspect of his expression and body language. "You've earned everything you've accomplished through dedication and hard work and the courage to prioritize your own success." The courage to prioritize my own success, he says, and I realize that this might be the most important lesson of my rebirth. That choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is sacrificing your potential for people who don't value what you offer. That family loyalty shouldn't require giving up your dreams. That love that comes with conditions isn't really love at all. Sophia's career stagnation over the same period confirms what I suspected about our family dynamics, as she struggles to maintain her previous level of achievement without the total focus and investment that our parents provided when they weren't dividing their attention between two daughters, when they could pour all their cultural ambitions into one child's musical development. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she confesses during one of our rare phone conversations, her voice carrying a vulnerability I never heard when she was the golden child. "I can't seem to perform at the same level anymore, can't find the confidence I used to have on stage." "Maybe you need to figure out whether you're playing piano because you love it or because it's what mom and dad want," I suggest gently, understanding now that both of us were damaged by parents who made love conditional on achievement, who created competition between sisters instead of supporting both daughters' individual talents and interests. The Olympics arrive like the fulfillment of every dream I sacrificed in my previous life, like the opportunity to prove that elite athletic achievement is just as valuable as any other kind of excellence, that representing your country at the highest levels of international competition is an honor that deserves recognition and support, rather than reluctant tolerance from family members who don't understand why anyone would choose sports over more refined pursuits. Walking into the Olympic venue wearing Team USA gear feels like stepping into an alternate reality, where my athletic identity is celebrated instead of barely tolerated, where my gymnastics career is treated as a source of national pride rather than family embarrassment, where the skills I've spent my entire life developing finally receive the recognition and respect they've always deserved. "This is it," James says as we stand together in the warm-up gym, his medical bag packed with everything I might need for competition, and his eyes filled with the kind of love and support I never experienced from my family. Everything you've worked for, everything you've sacrificed for comes down to the next few hours. As I mount the beam for my final routine of the all-around competition, I think about the 17-year-old girl who almost gave up her dreams for people who never deserved the sacrifice, who was so desperate for parental approval that she was willing to waste her Olympic potential sitting in concert halls applauding someone else's achievements. And I perform the routine of my life with the confidence that comes from finally understanding my own worth. The gold medal ceremony feels like vindication for every choice I made in this second life. Every moment when I prioritized my own goals over family expectations. Every time I chose independence over the conditional love that required me to be less than I was capable of becoming. And as the national anthem plays, I can see James crying with pride and Marcus beaming with satisfaction and Maya cheering with genuine happiness for my success. My parents arrive at the Olympics with a media crew, claiming they always believed in Elena for the cameras, while I watch from the athlete area and marvel at their ability to rewrite history, to take credit for supporting dreams they actually discouraged, and achievements they never thought were worth their time and attention. "We're so proud of our Olympic champion," my father tells the interviewer, his voice carrying the same authoritative confidence he uses in business meetings, as if he played any role in my success beyond providing the obstacle I had to overcome to reach my potential. "I'll consider rebuilding our relationship when you acknowledge that your favoritism hurt me and apologize sincerely," I tell them later in the family area, my gold medal hanging around my neck as a reminder that I succeeded despite their lack of support, not because of anything they provided. My success doesn't erase your failures as parents. James's proposal immediately after the medal ceremony feels like the perfect ending to this second chance at life, like the promise of building a future with someone who has always valued my dreams and supported my goals, who sees my athletic achievements as worthy of celebration rather than obstacles to overcome. "I've loved you since you were brave enough to choose yourself," he says as he gets down on one knee in front of the assembled media and cheering crowds, his voice carrying complete sincerity and admiration for the journey that brought me to this moment. "Will you marry someone who believes in your dreams as much as you do?" "Yes," I answer without hesitation, understanding that this is what love should feel like. Supportive instead of conditional, encouraging instead of limiting, proud instead of resentful. "You're the only person who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself." Our wedding 2 years later becomes everything I never knew I wanted, a celebration of partnership between equals, rather than a woman giving up her identity for marriage. My Olympic medals displayed alongside the Gymnastics Academy, where I train young athletes whose families lack the support system that every ambitious child deserves. Sophia's genuine apology at our wedding reception finally heals the rift between sisters that our parents' favoritism created, as she takes responsibility for accepting preferential treatment without questioning whether it was fair, for not recognizing how our family dynamics damaged both of us in different ways. "I'm sorry I never stood up for you," she says as we dance together at my reception, tears in her eyes as she acknowledges truths we've both avoided for too long. "I was so focused on being perfect that I didn't see how much pressure you were under to be invisible." "We were both trapped," I reply, meaning it completely, understanding finally that neither of us was responsible for our parents' inability to love both daughters equally, to support two different kinds of achievement with the same enthusiasm and investment. But we're free now to build the relationship we should have had all along. My autobiography becomes a bestseller 3 years after my Olympic victory. The story of a daughter who chose her own dreams over family expectations, resonating with readers who recognize their own struggles in my journey, from people pleaser to self advocate, from accommodating daughter to independent woman who refused to let other people define her worth. My parents chose her recital over my championship again becomes required reading in sports psychology programs and family therapy practices, a case study in how parental favoritism damages children and how individuals can overcome family dysfunction to achieve their potential, a reminder that sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to save yourself. The proceeds from my book sales fund scholarships for athletes from unsupportive families, providing training and coaching and financial support for young people whose parents don't understand or value their athletic gifts, whose dreams are dismissed as less important than more practical or refined pursuits that better match parental expectations. When my parents are forced to confront their favoritism publicly during book promotion interviews, Their discomfort and defensive responses only confirm that I made the right choice in prioritizing my own development over their comfort and refusing to sacrifice my potential for people who never valued what I offered. Elena has always been dramatic, my mother tells the talk show host who asks about my description of childhood favoritism, her voice carrying the same dismissive tone she used throughout my adolescence. Sophia needed more support because music is more demanding than sports. But the audience doesn't buy their excuses. The interviewer doesn't accept their deflections. And I watch from backstage as they struggle to explain away behavior that looks even worse under public scrutiny than it felt in private family conversations, as they face consequences for choices they never thought would be examined by anyone outside our family. This is what justice looks like, I think, as I prepare to join them on stage. Not revenge or punishment, but simply the truth being told publicly, their favoritism and manipulation and conditional love being recognized for what it was by people who understand that every child deserves support for their dreams, that parents shouldn't choose between their children's achievements, that love should build up rather than tear down. My life now is everything I dreamed of in those lonely nights at the training center when I first chose independence over family approval. A marriage built on mutual respect and shared goals. A career that allows me to pass on the support I never received. Financial independence that means I never have to compromise my values for security. And the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing I used my second chance wisely. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been given this opportunity to live my life again, if I had continued down the path of accommodation and sacrifice that led to mediocrity and early death, if I had never learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is wasting the potential you were given. But mostly, I focus forward rather than backward, on the young athletes I'm training who remind me of myself at their age. Talented and dedicated, but trapped by family expectations that don't match their dreams. Learning from my example that they have the right to pursue excellence in their chosen field, regardless of whether their parents understand or approve. Your dreams matter, I tell them during every training session, watching their faces light up with the recognition that comes from being truly seen and valued for who they are, rather than who someone else wants them to be. Choose yourself, always choose yourself because no one else will do it for you. And in my 17-year-old students, I see the Elena I used to be and the Elena I became. The girl who almost gave up everything for other people's comfort, and the woman who learned that loving yourself enough to pursue your dreams is the only way to build a life worth living. The only way to honor the gifts you've been given and the potential that lives inside you waiting to be fulfilled. This is my story. A daughter who died choosing other people's happiness over her own dreams, and a woman who was reborn into the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be less than you are capable of becoming. Refuse to sacrifice your potential for people who don't value what you offer. Refuse to accept conditional love when you deserve so much more. I chose myself, finally and completely, and in that choice, I found everything I had been searching for: success and love, and the deep satisfaction that comes from living authentically, from building a life that reflects your values rather than other people's expectations, from using your gifts in service of your own dreams rather than someone else's vision of who you should be. The gold medal hanging in my office catches the morning light as I prepare for another day of training young athletes. Another day of passing on the most important lesson I ever learned: that you have the right to choose yourself always and without apology, because that choice is the beginning of everything good that will ever happen in your life.